Welcome back, gang. It's Deltia from DeltiasGaming.com, and we're back with the Stamina Dragonknight, the Butcher or T3. So I'm going to give you a bunch of different options on how to play this. One, Sword and Shield, more of a tank for newer players that want something to really survivable. And two, a two-hander slash bow build. Yes, bow. For those solar players out there that just like to get after it and nuke people. So tons of gear options. It's very effective, crafted or otherwise. So let's DK dunk some people. Y'all ready? The Nugget Man, and we're talking Stam DK. So I want to go through with what changed, what hasn't, and what way I found to play the build. Now, basically the biggest changes I found in Elder Scrolls Online specifically are the weapons. So you have the Asylum, you have the Masters, and you have the Maelstrom. All three great choices. Finally got the Maelstrom Battle Axe. We're going to explain why we use this, but this specifically will change your build if you have this or you do not. This does insane amount of damage for cleave. Seems like a really weird skill to use, but it's incredibly powerful. So I'm going to show you some options if you have it or you don't. Bow, same thing. Seems really weird that I would use a bow when I hate bows, but it's incredible amount of damage. 750, basically if both those proc, 5 seconds on that one specific target, it's going to hit real hard. So two different ways to play this. One is kind of this setup. Two-hander bow, solo kind of damage dealer. Another one, sword and shield, two-hander, both using heavy armor. Kind of more of a tanky group utility role. Both very effective. So let's get to each first. So for you solo players, I'm just going to show you what I've come up with, what I like, and why. So we're going to talk about the skills, but just remember that this skill right here is very flexible depending on what weapon you use, okay? So if you have access to Veteran Maelstrom Arena weapons, Crit Rush, if you do that a lot, that's going to be really useful. Have access to Master's Weapon, Brawler. It's going to be incredible for AoE. But if you're not focused so much on area damage, then you're probably going to want to use the Asylum. If you don't have any of those, just craft something, Nirnhone. It's still really good. So this setup, what I have right now, is specifically for the Brawler / Master's Weapon setup. So I have great single target, and I have great AoE. It's very flexible. So I went with this morph specifically because the damage shield. So when I'm getting Zerg down, there's 30 people beating on me. If I just sit there in a cone and smash this, I can hit 8k non-crit on people. And the shield is incredible. Pump up your Bastion champion points. So it provides me very tanky, very damage dealing. It's like a super powerful steel tornado. So if I don't have the Master's Weapon, if I'm not using that, I would swap this out for something. So let's go to our little skills here. And you got some options. So more AoE focused pressure, Noxious Breath. You can see 2200 stamina, but it applies poison damage over time. But really it's that major fracture, so that will increase your damage, especially if you're playing solo. Venomous Claw, incredibly cheap, high damage. So single target, can't beat it. And this is for the solo build. So that's kind of what I would go here. And if you're going to duel, you could even do Trap Beast, so on. So there's a lot of different options. Now, the standard setup that I use, you notice I'm not using a gap closer. I think I've gotten too comfortable using gap closers, and they're effective, but sometimes it feels like it's a dead skill in my bar because the range is 3.5 meters. So they have to be further back from me. Yeah, opening up on an unsuspecting target's great, but a lot of times it misses. A lot of times it just doesn't work. So I've kind of modified it to use Fossilize as my main gap closer. Fossilize. Still incredible. This is a stun, single target, so it's not as good as Mass Hysteria and Nightblade, but it drops block. And then after the stun, they're immobilized. So if you hit an unsuspecting player on this, what they're going to do is they're going to break free. That's going to cost a lot of stamina. And if they panic, they're going to dodge roll because they don't know how to deal with the immobilization. That's going to cost a lot of stamina. So it's your control mechanism. And you can see the range is 8 meters, so you're going to have to be close to them. But we have ways to do that. And once you get this on them, that's when you're going to set up your combo to nuke somebody down. So Fossilize is the key skill. So how do we get close to them without a main gap closer? Heavy armor. Why do I wear heavy armor? It's more advantageous to wear heavy armor than it is to use medium and use shuffle in today's game as far as all-around potential. Not only just surviving, but resource sustained. Because when you get hit using heavy armor, Constitution, you get back magic and stamina. It's not just one or the other. You obviously get more healing received, so increasing magic and stamina for fully charged heavy attacks. So I don't see the point in using medium armor for a little bit more weapon damage. 12, that's nice. A little bit more sneak, a little bit more recovery, reduced cost, and more crit. So when we use heavy armor, like in other previous builds you probably have watched, forward momentum. It's a skill that not a lot of people use. Yes, it doesn't have the burst heal that Rally does, but we have plenty of ways to heal ourselves and survive as a DK. This allows us to be immune to snares and mobilizes. And essentially there's two ways to do this in the game right now. You're a magic build, misform, because Purge is too costly to run repeatedly. You're a stand build, forward momentum. Yes, there's cleanses, and yes, there's other things, but pretty much these are the two standard for getting out of dodge. And with the way the game is right now, there's tons of snares, tons of mobilizations, and you have to be mobile. That's why I love stand builds, because of the mobility, and this is the key. So usually you're going to hit this so you can get that 8 seconds of immunity, and then you're going to rush up on a target, fossilize them. And then we have this. Okay, dizzying swing. You know, the more if it stuns them, I don't like using it, but that's what the Dragonknight has to use for a two-hander. And to be honest with you, it's very advantageous to almost do fully charged heavy attacks over this. Really, it hits about the same, costs about the same time, and it gives you back resources. So it doesn't stun, but we already have a stun on here. So not a skill I really like, but man, it hits hard, it has a nice range, and if people aren't suspecting it, you will lift them and knock them to the ground. So still useful as our main single target spammable attack. And then we have Reverse Slice. So two good morph choices here. Reverse Slice is more of the AoE splash damage focus, and then the other morph is more of your single target kill. Killing players is fundamentally important for this build. So let's link two things so you understand why. One, Combat Frenzy. When you kill a player, generate 20 ultimate. Got it. No brainer. Earth and Heart. Battle Roar. When you cast an ultimate, restore resources. So essentially, if we're killing stuff, it's infinite resources. So that's why we have the Bloodspawn helmet as well. Killing things is so vitally important. Now, you can combine this with Executioner for just solo kills, and then use the Asylum Battle Axe for incredible ulti-gen, which basically leads to incredible sustain on a Dragonknight. Very bunch of different ways to play, bunch of different effective ones to do as well. The main reason I use Reverse Slice is the combination I like to use on big groups is to brawler the crap out of them. Once one target gets around 30% health, switch to Reverse Slice. You're still going to do splash damage. It's going to allow you to kill a player, and it's going to allow you to get Take Flight up really, really quick. So, Take Flight. Now, I experimented with the Fighter's Guild ability, Dawnbreaker, Smiting, and both are really good. So if we look at the tooltip, unbuffed, 12,000 physical damage, and then 12,000 over time, and the stun. Okay, 18,000 and a stun. But look at the radius, 6.5 versus a conal effect. So of 10 meters. Both are very, very good. One, very low cost. You might want to use forward momentum before using it, because if you're immobilized, it's not going to let you leap always. The range of 28 meters is really cool, so it kind of acts as a gap closer. It provides a stun. Same thing with Dawnbreaker or Smiting. The question you need to ask yourself is, do you want the absolute most burst potential within 1 second or 3 or 4? That's kind of where you're at with this. Dawnbreaker or Smiting is great against vampires, werewolves, and healers. Take Flight, incredible just for nuking down people. And let's be real here. It's one of the coolest looking abilities in the game. I mean, a DK dunk. It doesn't get any cooler than this. And when I get dunked on by other players, I'm butthurt about it. So I just love this ability. And after playing with it again, I can't help but use it. So this is the offensive bar for the solo build. The back bar, and you're going to see this is kind of very similar to how I play, just swapping basically one weapon. So, bow. Why the hell is Deltia using a bow? He hates bows. He has nasty videos on bows. Really, Major Expedition is great. So we got that. You can build up ultimate using fully charged heavy attacks, all that sort of stuff. It's great. Poison Injection combined with a Master's weapon? Yeah. When I tag somebody with this, the enchant procs for 5 seconds. So the increased weapon damage from the poison effect will not show up on your tooltip, but what it will do is it will show up on that individual character. You will hit harder that individual character, not AoE, but that character will get that it's kind of like a buff debuff type thing. You're getting almost like 5,000 weapon damage when this is all scaled. Throw on some medium armor, it's just through the roof. Throw on Fury, it's through the roof. So the ability on a solo build, so I can dodge roll, get major expedition. I have immunity to snares and immobilizations with forward momentum. That's going to allow me to use a tripod. As an Argonian, tripods are gold. And yes, I'm playing as Stam DK as an Argonian, and it's very, very effective. So this is really the one skill that changes depending on what we do. It's just, it hits super hard too. Combine this with a fully charged heavy attack, this is going to dunk people. You obviously have your no-brainer, Resolving Vigor, Self-Heal. So that's what we're going to heal with. Now, the way to do this is to combine the Alliance War skill, Assault, in case you don't know, Resolving Vigor. Well, you want to cast an ability first, Igneous Shields. You gain Major Mending, increasing your healing done by 3 seconds. So this shield is not as actually strong. You can see it's 4,000 magic, so it's a lot of magic. But it's a major mending. If you hit it first and then go into your Resolving Vigor, it doesn't have the 5 seconds, but those first initial ticks are going to be very, very powerful. So compare this build to, let's say, my Stamplar build. I don't have a cleanse, but I have major mending instead of minor. So that's the advantage that this has over it. The disadvantage is you don't have a cleanse. So the third skill I use is Dragonfire Scales, Draconic Power. It's a reflect. Now, it doesn't reflect the Warden's Birds, which is super annoying. I think that skill is busted right now. But almost everything else it does. And if you know me, I'm getting sniped all the time, and I hate snipers and C-fraggers and people that just sit at range and shoot flame wheels. This thing is super, super, super good. Now, if you're not playing solo and let's say you have a dedicated healer or something, you wouldn't use this necessarily. You could do another trick, which is Molten Armaments for fully charged heavy attack damage. You can literally just two-shot people with this. So that's would be my flex spot if I was going to flex this out. Now, something I think you must use, Volatile Armor. So it gives you resistances, which is great. It shoots spikes out, and that can be very, very useful because if a Nightblade, let's say, cloaks, you can shoot spikes out and detect them. And it returns magic damage to melee attackers. Not so important. The main reason we're using it for is the armor buff. And then also, increase your health recovery by 5% for each slotted, so that's good on the back bar. And then increases your healing received by 12 while Draconic Power is activated. So this is something you always want to have up. You should have spikes on your back as a Stam DK at almost all times. The damage mitigation from it, the healing received, the damage reflected, it's one of the most profound abilities that we have. So try to look at your character, your buffs. Do you have spikes on it, no matter which type of build you play? And then lastly, we have the ultimate Corrosive Armor. It's just incredible. You're not dying when this thing goes off, unless you like jump into a billion dudes. So you'll see increases, ignores all physical attacks. Damage is capped at 3%. So if you buff up fully, you jump into a Zerg, pop this sucker, and then just do Brawler into Reverse Slice, there'll be 50 people beating on you, and you're going to survive for a few seconds. Combine it with a tripod, with an ultimate. Basically what I do is I just jump in there, get everyone's attention, and then my friends come in with Dawnbreakers, and we kill huge groups. It's super, super fun. The Dragonknight is just a riot to play. You have so many tools. It's not perfect, but it's a great build that you're super tanky and you can do damage at the same time. I really don't know which one I like more, this or my Templar. It's so much fun. So that's kind of how you play this. Forward momentum is key. Just remember, that's your way to move around, okay? Along with your immovability potions. Immune to knockback, major speed, and stamina back. So get your oh crap ultimate. If you're a newer player and you're kind of getting frustrated, getting Zerg down, pop the sucker, and it's very, very hard to die. So that's what I recommend to do. And this is kind of how you set up your skills for the solo player. So let's talk about the tanky sort of role, if you want to play that. Okay, for the tanky type build, what you're going to do is basically have almost the identical back bar as the bow, except you're going to put your forward momentum here. And you're going to use two-hander specifically for this. But this really isn't going to be your offensive bar. This is more of your buff bar, similar to what we use for the bow for our solo build. So we're still going to use a two-hander as a Stam build running heavy armor, so we can get rid of the mobilizations and immunity. If you can't move, you can't survive. You can't play solo or in a group. So we also move Fossilized back here as well. So we have an on-demand stun. This is flexible spot if you're playing in a group and you have someone like a Nightblade that has mass hysteria that can drop block. But I really think it's advantageous, whether you're playing solo or in a group, to have some mechanic that can drop block. because that's what the game is doing. Volatile Armor, already talked about that. Igneous Shields into Vigor, already talked about that. We have our one offensive ult, and we put it on our back bar, Dawnbreaker of Smiting. The reason why is for two-hander, if you look at the fully charged heavy attack, where is it? Follow-up. Your successful fully charged heavy attacks increases the damage of your next attack by 10 seconds, 10% for 7 seconds. So as a tank, even this thing can hit really, really hard if you fully charge heavy attack into a Dawnbreaker of Smiting. I like the damage over time effect on this specific build because I'm pressuring them slowly in terms of damage versus like doing a dizzying swing combo or something like that. So you can experiment with it and do take flight, but I like the damage over time effect because I use a little bit more in this particular setup. Okay, to get some context behind why we're using Sword and Shield, I want you to understand we're using the Master's Sword and Shield. This thing is utterly incredible now. When you deal damage with Puncture, you heal for 2,600 and gain spell and physical resistance equal to the amount healed for 3 seconds. Your main spammable attack, which is essentially Taunt, becomes utterly fantastic because it heals you. It hits very hard. It debuffs the enemy, and it doesn't cost a ton. So it's for players that, you know, just want to basically have something easy that's really survivable, because you can easily reach mitigation cap, especially with Bloodspawn on. So that's what we're going to be focusing on. We're using the Master's Weapon. If you don't have the Master's Weapon, you can easily run Knights Errant as well. And I'll show you that set. It's very hard to run an effective build right now with both of the sets, so that's why I don't. But you could run it on the body, and then also the Sword and Shield with Masters, and just have freaky healing, because it is cut in half. But if you want freaky healing, you could do that. So when I say freaky healing, I'm talking about in PvP, I'm getting 2k heals every time I puncture. Now that can't crit, but it does scale very well with heavy armor, and it scales well with Argonian passive as well. So 2k heal every time I use a puncture is really, really easy to survive. That means it's good for dueling as well. Now, I'm not God's gift to dealing, so don't get it twisted, but this is kind of the setup that I have. Now, this is a lot of single target pressure and group utility, okay? So what you're going to focus on is your first ability is Venomous Claw. You want Venomous Claw because it pushes a lot of pressure on them, and it's deceptive. It ramps up in damage. So you're not going to want to use this frequently because it's 10.5 second duration, but you're going to want to initially put this on to someone. It's going to hurt them, okay? Also, if you're doing more of an AoE group build, Noxious Breath is good as well, but you already get the debuff with Ransack. So Ransack's going to apply a major fracture. Only physical resistance. If you're playing with magic builds and not playing solo, you want to go the other morph. But the minor resolve back is nice as well. So Claw for a good single target pressure. Get your main spammable ability, Ransack. That's also going to heal you. When in doubt, spam it. It's that powerful, okay? Now you have one of the best stuns in the game, Reverberating Bash, because it applies Major Defile. Can't say how good that really is. The downside of it, it's not going to apply that debuff unless they drop block, and then you get them square on it. So if you're going up against like a perma blocker, you're going to actually have to fossilize them first and then reverb them. And so that way the debuff happens. Now, if they're a Templar and they just cleanse it off, you really want to prioritize that debuff for your group. Things will die. If you put the dot on them, you puncture them, you reverb them, lock them down, they will die. It might take a minute, but you'll get them down. Lock them down with Draconic Powers, Choking Talons. I like this morph because of the minor maim. I'm not a magic build, so the other morph doesn't appeal to me as well. Now, this is hefty magic cost. It's great for group, and it's great when wearing heavy armor because we're getting magic back even though we're stamina based. So the way to do this, if you don't have this or don't like this, let's say you want to go more of a dueling solo PvP route. You go to Fighter's Guild, you go Rearming Trap. Rearming Trap, physical damage, it's going to grant you minor force, and it's going to do the same sort of thing, but it's going to be one target. So if you're going to be dueling or something like that, you drop that sucker right there. You're playing more in a group, boom, Choking Talons. You still have your Reflect on. So realistically, you don't need to bar swap unless you're getting, you need to apply your buff, your armor buff, or you need to heal yourself or someone else because you have a way to reflect damage. You have a way to basically heal while doing damage. You have a way to stun. You have a way to immobilize, and you have a strong damage over time effect. It's an incredible setup. It really works well. Sword and shield, shield discipline. Now you'll say, okay, well that's kind of a weird morph, but look at it. Your one-hand shield abilities cost nothing. So if you're in trouble, you pop this sucker, you block for free without any stamina, you rip out a fully charged heavy attack to get stamina back, and then you just spam ransack. It's free. So you're getting 2k heals a second, depending on your setup, for free, and doing damage, and debuffing the enemy, and giving yourself a buff. Yeah, it's very, very powerful. I can't say enough about the Master's Weapons. So that is the skill setup, and that's kind of how you use this. Really, you're only using your two-hander for buffs, heals, and a fully charged heavy attack. Sword and shield, dot, ripping and gripping, locking down, reflecting, stunning, and then spamtastic shield discipline. It's great. So let's talk about the gear. Okay, so you have tons and tons of options in terms of gear. So I'll show you some stats here real quick. So we get major, and we get minor brutality. So I'm at 3,600 as an Argonian, buffed, and not with the 700 weapon damage buff. So 3,600 is pretty good with 33k stamina as an Argonian. What sets am I using? You guessed it. Shacklebreaker. It's crafted. It looks cool, which you look good, you play good. But the real reason is the max stats. It allows you to do a lot of different setups. So you can use health recovery food, be super tanky on my tank build. You can use dubious food right here, which gives you a decent amount of sustain. As you can see, 1,200 without any buffs up. And you get max health and max stamina. So this is the really tanky food that I use. So it's going to lower my stamina, obviously, but I am just really, really hard to kill. So that's the 5-piece I run. Now, there's tons and tons of alternatives. I already said earlier, if you're running the tanky build, you can do Knights Errant. But a lot of people are running Fury, okay? And Fury is incredible damage. It stacks up to like 750, 800 some weapon damage. That's great. But for me, it doesn't have the magic that goes with it. And so it does take a while to ramp up as well. So if you're going up against targets you want to nuke within a few seconds, you're not going to get the full benefit of Fury. If you're playing like huge keep battles or you're dueling, so the fights are going to take 2-3 minutes, you want to do maximum potential damage, this thing's incredible. Also, 7th Legion. I've tested 7th Legion out. I just didn't like it in comparison to the regen and the max stats that it gives me. Health recovery is nice, weapon crit's nice, but I'm telling you, that max recovery really helps me out. And so does the max stats. So the proc, the heal, very useful. Weapon damage is great. You just need to find out what works for you. Are you using spells a lot? Well, if you are, Shacklebreaker is great. If you want pure raw damage, Fury. If you want something tanky but still gives you a lot of damage sporadically, 7th Legion. And some people still like Black Rose. It doesn't have a whole lot of damage, but basically infinite resources if you're getting hit. So that's the setup for the 5-piece that I would kind of play around with to see what fits you best. Now, on the 2-piece monster helms for the standard setup here, the solo build, it's Bloodspawn. The reason Bloodspawn, I think, is considered best in slot in Dragonknight is really because of the passive, Battle Roar. So Battle Roar gives you back resources every time you use an ultimate. So our entire setup is used based on ultimate. So it gives us recovery, it gives us ultimate, which we can use in a defensive ultimate or we can use an offensive. It gives us tons of resistance and only has a 6-second cooldown. So the great thing about this is it is offensive, defensive, and sustained. It's just a perfect set for the Dragonknight. But it's not the only one. I mean, obviously you have Troll King. That's a great set as well. Very, very tanky. Tons of group utility. And I throw this on if no one in my group has it, I'm playing the tank role. You also have Salines. Probably the most damage producing set out there right now. Very, very good, but there is some counterplay to it. And then you have Slimecraw, which gives you minor berserk, which you don't have solo. And that's a good all-around set if you want just a little more high damage, but don't want to rely on burst. Okay. Now, the 3-piece set that I run is agility on this specific build. Talked about that. A cheap alternative if you don't have agility is good old endurance here. And then endurance is exactly what I run on my tanky setup. Reason why? I like a little bit more max health. And with a little bit more max health, what I can do is I can run this gold food on my tank. and that will get me about 30 some K stamina, about 27 to 30K health, and just a crap ton of recovery. The recovery is very useful for using talons and locking people in place. You actually need a lot of magic recovery. So that's the alternative that I use there. Alternatively, helms, well, on the tanky build, Troll King if no one else has it, but Bloodspawn is your standard. I'm running 5-1-1, mainly for the larger resource pool, impenetrable traits on at least 5, and maybe 6. One well-fitted, one infused is the way I go. You can see I use prismatic enchants on my heavy pieces, chest, legs, helm, and then on my smaller pieces, I use just standard stamina. Weapons, talked about that already, but specifically the traits, Nirnhone, most damage producing, very, very good. You can see I have Oblivion damage. That's really good enchant, because remember that you can actually enchant these now and not lose the one-piece bonus. So you're going to want to enchant it or use poisons. Oblivion damage, great for ripping off fully charged heavy attacks and having unavoidable damage. There's a bunch of different things you can use, reducing armor, just poison, tons of stuff, but that's the one I go with. Back bar, infused weapon damage makes a lot of sense for this specific build. And then your tanky setup on the traits, I also run Nirnhone. Can do a lot of damage. Now, the life drain enchant or the poisons, you can add even more effects to your self-healing. It's incredible. And in the back bar two-hander, it's not so much important, but, you know, best in the slot, it doesn't have to be Maelstrom or anything. You could do powered for more healing on vigors. Defending is really, really good since you're going to be retreating and taking damage on that. Just depends on your specific setup. So that's how I would run it. Alternatively, if you don't have the Master's Sword, like I said earlier, go with Knight Errant's Jewelry, Knight Errant's Sword and Shield, and then the standard 5-piece, and you would still have a really, really good setup. Okay, that covers skills, gear. Now, let's talk about champion points. So champion points, pretty similar to the Templar. I'm going to be running 30 into Warlord, 20 into Sprinter. I'm going to be running actually a lot less in Mooncalf. Some helpful tips in the comments. I think I was in diminishing returns or jump points, so these might not be absolute perfect numbers. Still working on it. Experiment it for yourself. But I went a lot less points into Mooncalf because it's super diminishing returns. So that extra magic recovery is super helpful. Tenacity, healthy, especially if you're running Troll King, not necessarily 100% useful. And then if you get 120 points in here, this actually is quite helpful. So especially if you're an orc, this thing is nasty for running away. Tumbling, a lot into there, 30, so 12% roll dodge is nice. I'm not blocking a whole lot, so I don't put any points in here, but you could optimize it for the way you play. The blue tree, I put 1 into Blessed just to get something out of it. Physical weapon expert, master at arms, direct damage attacks, and then heavy attacks or light attacks. Since I'm doing tons of them, it's free damage. If you don't know what to do, do a heavy attack. I mean, there's no downside to doing it. And then I do 49 into mighty, 47 into piercing, 44 into precise strikes, which includes healing crits, so that's very, very useful. And then 11 into thaumaturge. Over here, I go 48 into ironclad, 38 into resistance. And then you want really to focus your champion point priority to get unchained. So that way, within 5 seconds, boom, you use an ability, it's almost free. Usually I refresh forward momentum or vigor. Hardy for 43, elemental defender for 43, thick skin for 48. And then you want 10 in here so you can like help other players. Resurrecting is actually important. Battlegrounds, Cyrodiil, whatever. So that's where I go with that. 3 in expert defender, 7 in quick recovery. So we're going to talk about consumables, Mundus stones, and all that stuff. Now, I'm an Argonian, playing a stand build. Why? Well, Argonian, I think, all around is the best race. But more importantly, I wanted to get the point across. You can be a badass DK, Stam, DPS with a magic-based race. It doesn't matter. It depends on the player. These races aren't perfectly balanced. But stop worrying about it. If you like an Argonian, play it the way, whatever way you want to play it. It comes down to improving your skill and getting your comfort zone than it does the racial passives. Yes, 6% stamina is important, but it's more important to keep working and keep grinding, keep trying to get better. So, resourcefulness. This is probably one of the best sustained passive in the game, if not the best. Every 45 seconds, I get a flood of resources. That's why Shacklebreaker on Argonian is incredible. I'm going to try it on a Magic DK next, so we'll see how it goes. Increase max magic, meh, doesn't really matter. Increase max health. That's nice because it allows us to use the agility jewelry without being super, super low. You get some resistance there. Increase your healing done and healing received. Yes, this is nasty, especially using the sword and board master's weapon. It really helps. It adds a lot to it. 2K, non-crit, on demand, using the Tanky setup. It's just incredible. Also, make sure that you level that alchemy for medicinal use. It's quintessential for playing endgame. Reason being is your potions. I know I tell you guys this all the time. Potions, 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 potions. If you die and you have a potion up, you're wrong. You should always die with an empty potion. If you're getting ganked, you're getting this, you're getting that, break free potion. Break free potion. It has to be instinctive. You're going to charge in, potion. You're going to run away, potion. Major expedition for 47 seconds. It's on 45-second cooldown. That's why we don't need any other buff to do that. 15 seconds of immunity. That's 1/3 of the time you're immune to CC. Stam and stam recovery. Yes, they're expensive, but you can't pay enough for performance. If you want freak show healing, essence of lingering health, you pop this sucker, you go into someone and you start puncturing, it's going to be hard to die, especially with this food up. So the default food is this on my tank build, and then this dubious Comorian on my DPS build. And then you can run poisons if you want over your enchant. On my sword and board, I run this poison just because it gives me a crap ton of healing along with the proc too. And you could use this potion and get more healing. So you can see, if you struggle with self-heals, dude, major mending, pick up a stam DK and just hit puncture for 5 seconds. It's going to be hard to kill you. Mundus stones. It makes sense for me to go with the warrior on this guy since I get major and minor brutality weapon damage buff, so it's really nice on a stam DK. I even tried the ritual just to see how high I could get my healing up on puncture, and it's pretty crazy, but I would all around do this. It almost applies to every single ability that we use. I want to throw in a quick bit of leveling advice. Always put one skill on your bar for each skill line. It's quintessentially important. As you start leveling, swap them in and out so you get them all leveled, all morphs. When you get to endgame, you don't have to screw with it. Now, depending if you want to play the solo route or whatever, you're going to need a two-hand. Make that your primary weapon. So you got 3 slots on here for their skill lines. You got 1 for two-hand, and then pick whatever one else you want. Sword and shield is great. You can modify the build and play it as well. And also you can do dungeons and tank. No one wants to tank. So if you want to get Undaunted leveled and do dungeons, throw a sword and shield skill on there. Just taunt stuff and whole block. Boom. You don't? You want to go to solo route? Pick up bow. You want to focus on leveling your heavy armor, medium armor skills, and getting those passives unlocked. You don't need agility necessarily because it's 5 or more, but the rest of them you will, okay? You can be a vampire or a werewolf on this. I don't recommend vampire because we have no way to cleanse ourselves. Werewolf, I don't slot the ultimate, so there's really no benefit to it. But there is some really effective werewolf builds out there, so experiment with it. See if you like it. Also going to want to get the Fighters Guild, Mages Guild, and Undaunted Quest unlock priority number 1, so you can start working on those skill lines. Undaunted right here, the max stats is just fundamentally important, but so is the Undaunted command, especially if you're playing with someone that uses synergies like, I don't know, or cleansing ritual. That thing comes in so handy, especially when you're getting zerged down. So level this up. Alliance War is going to take a lot longer to level up, but you can get Resolving Vigor really, really quick. If you don't have access to Resolving Vigor and this build looks fun for you, pick up Dragon Blood, and there's 2 different morphs. Both are magic based, but one gives you major endurance, minor vitality, and one is based off your max magic. So the green Dragon's Blood could make sense for you. So stick that on there until you get that skill. And get your passive. So you're going to need to spend a lot of time getting sky shards. So I would check out my previous video on group dungeons and just spend a lot of time getting sky shards, doing non-vet PvP, working into getting those skills, because it'll take you some time. But I love Stam Dragonknight, and I'll leave you with this. The reason I like Stam Dragonknight is because it's tanky but damage dealing. So it doesn't seem like I ever have to sacrifice one for the other. If you're a newer player and you're struggling to get into PvP and you want something mobile that can self-heal like a truck, this is it. Is this the best build in the world? I have no idea, but it works very, very well for what I like to do. Be tanky, but yet being able to do damage. If I want to be stupid tanky, I just make a couple modifications. I got crafted gear. Yes, I have the master weapons, but you can easily substitute those things in and out and be super effective. Well, thank you for watching. If you're going to look for videos, I will post some streams that I did solo and group for gameplay and how I play this in combat and explanation. But I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Get in there, experiment. Get out of your comfort zone. If you want to get good at anything, you just got to do it over and over. And don't expect instant results. I got my face kicked in for 1 year in PvP, and I keep telling you all that story because I want you to understand. If this looks fun and looks like you want to do it or whatever, try it. If it doesn't work for you, send me a message, email me. I'll see what I can do with you. But mainly it comes down to being able to handle pressure. And if you get in the game and you just sit back in your keep sniping people, you're never going to advance. If you like that playstyle, great. But if you want to get up in front, DK dunk some people, and do some really fun stuff, check this out, man. The Butcher, T3, woohoo! We back, fam.